work in the advocacy and the policy development space, but we also do a lot in terms of helping the broader business community learn how to be better involved in Georgia's transportation ecosystem. We have 7 primary agencies in the state of Georgia that maintain our transportation infrastructure network. And they include the Georgia Ports Authority, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the Georgia Road and Tollway Authority, Georgia Regional Transportation Authority. We consider MARTA one of those as the primary public transportation arm here in Metro Atlanta, and then obviously the Georgia Department of Transportation. Georgia Department of Transportation is celebrating their 100-year anniversary, so they've been around for 100 years and have done a lot of great work over the years. Georgia DOT is largely considered to be one of the best departments of transportation in the entire country. And when you look at metrics like projects on time and projects on budget, they consistently score the top 2 or 3 in the country, and so we're very fortunate to have Jay and Russell and the leadership over there. They're doing a great job, and I think most, if not everybody, would note that GDOT is doing its best work and doing better than they have in many, many years, particularly considering the fact that almost 2 years ago we passed one of the most major pieces of transportation funding and reform legislation in decades. GDOT is now managing a program that has grown to be twice what it was prior to the passage of House Bill 170, and they continue to just excel at that. I think if you talk to anybody in leadership over at GDOT, they would tell you that that does not happen without the assistance of their partners on the private side. And GDOT maintains a variety of relationships with a variety of different companies that help them do the work that they do on a daily basis. So today we're grateful to be joined by Treasurer Young, who's the Procurement Administrator for the Office of Procurement over at the Georgia Department of Transportation. He's going to talk a little bit about doing business with GDOT and walk through some of the processes and the opportunities that might be available there. I can tell you, I have looked at the presentation. There's a lot of really good information in here, and I actually am looking forward to learning some of this stuff today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Treasury. As you guys know, those of you who have done these webinars with us before, there is an interface there in your GoToWebinar program where you can submit questions for the end of the program, which will then go through when the program has concluded. So again, thank you all for being here, and with that, I'll turn it over to Treasury.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you today. We'll get started right away because I've really got, Seth mentioned, I've really got a lot of information I'm trying to share. And when I was approached with doing this, I said, you know, it's really not going to do a whole lot of good if I just talk about the 2 areas that I supervise. I supervise 2 groups, which we'll get into in just a moment. But there are 2 groups that we're also going to talk about that I do not supervise, but kind of make up the broadest picture of the procuring organizations that Georgia DOT has within it. So many folks have many different perceptions of how government jobs are won. Not all of those perceptions are necessarily positive, but in reality, there are very clear and regimented rules at both the state and federal level which govern how that work is awarded. So the key to all of that is matching the type of services and goods that you provide with the needs of the department and knowing the process for applying and bidding on that work. So as we think about the broader world of procurement, almost all governments, including GDOT, have procurement rules, sometimes governed by state law and other times by federal law. That's only when federal funds are being used to pay for the services and goods. And the goal of any procurement is to either award to the lowest bid, to the best value, or the most qualified, depending on the services and goods being acquired and the rules associated with doing so. The biggest challenge in any procurement for us is to work with our customer to make sure their needs are clearly defined so that bidders can bid on the work or the items being bought and give a good price for what's being bought, except for when we're acquiring engineering and design-related services. So we have rules from 2 primary areas. Operational purchasing defers to rules promulgated by Georgia's Department of Administrative Services and their state purchasing division. While for engineering and design-related services, we refer to Official Code of Georgia. I'll shorten that to be OCGA in the future. So that's OCGA 50-22-1 through 50-22-9 when no federal money is involved. But when federal money is involved, we refer to 23 Code of Federal Regulations Part 172, which are the rules given to us by FHWA for procuring engineering and design-related services. So the goal of this presentation is to try to educate you on what area within the department procures what and why and how, so you'll be better informed and know where to go to become engaged. So as you think about procurement functions, procurement entails many different services and goods. But first, it's important to note there are some items that are not subject to normal procurement rules as follows. Research projects is one of those. Many of these are conducted with universities under the state university system, such as Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, Georgia State, Georgia Southern, just to name a few. And the state constitution allows us to contract with them directly without following any procurement process. Utility agreements is another area. We have many agreements with utility companies that are not subject to procurement rules simply because they are the only source available in that area. They're the only utility there. Local government agreements follows similar path to the research projects in that the Georgia Constitution allows GDOT to contract with local governments for a variety of services without going through a procurement process, since they are another governmental entity and our roles sometimes intersect. We also have, under Title 32 of the Official Code of Georgia, the ability for GDOT to procure what we call rapid maintenance response and quick response projects. Those are good for essentially maintenance and operational improvements up to $200,000. So GDOT has chosen to procure these through an informal procurement process whereby we seek at least 3 bids directly from firms who are known to provide the specific services required. And of those bids, the award is made to the lowest that can meet the requirements. So it's important to note that these are not posted publicly in the interest of time, since it's typically the need is typically due to safety and operational improvements that need to be done very quickly. The last item are operational purchases, which fall under $25,000. So the bid threshold for our operational purchases was raised about 3 years ago to $25,000 from $5,000. The goal was being to allow state entities, not just GDOT, but every state entity, to obtain services or goods from small companies wherever those agencies are located throughout the state. So here at GDOT, we've chosen to implement a little more strict policy where anything under $5,000 can be bought outright, but anything from $5,000 to $25,000 must be obtained typically through 3 quotes so we can ensure we're spending taxpayer money wisely. And there are a few exceptions when it comes to heavy equipment and some vehicles. So here's a picture of what the groups look like, 4 major groups within GDOT that conduct purchasing function. So Transportation Services Procurement, which I'll refer to in the future as TSP, is responsible for the procurement of engineering and design-related services. Construction Bidding is responsible for the procurement of all roadway construction bids. You may hear me refer to them as CBA, or Construction Bidding Administration. But Innovative Delivery, sometimes called Innovative Program Delivery, is responsible for the design, build, and P3 procurements. And then Operational Purchasing is responsible for procuring operational goods and services, including routine maintenance services. So think of it like this. TSP is first because we have to engineer and design the projects that we build. So the design and engineering comes first. After the design and the plans are complete, those are then given to Construction Bidding Administration so that they can publish them through the BidX program and receive the bids for construction. But then as soon as the construction is complete, you have a motorist comes along and runs into the guardrail or the grass starts to grow, and then Operational Purchasing is responsible for procuring the services needed for fixing that guardrail or for mowing that grass. Now, Innovative Delivery is the other consideration. And it's important to know that they can procure services that potentially could cover some of the things that all 3 of the other groups can do. However, typically Innovative combines the elements that both TSP and Construction Bidding procure, and we'll go into that in a little greater detail. They could also do some things that are operational, but to date we have not done any procurements that result in an operating and maintaining capacity. So we'll get right into talking about TSP. So they are responsible for procuring both engineering and design-related services. And this has broad categories, which you'll see on the screen, from transportation planning, mass transit operations, highway design in both roadway and structures, topography, construction engineering and supervision, and erosion and sedimentation control. Each one of these major categories has many different subcategories that fall underneath them. I'm going to show you a little later in the presentation where you can go and get to that information. But TSP also procures some specialty services specific to geotechnical field services and right-of-way related services. Just to give you an idea, as mentioned earlier, TSP is responsible for following 23 CFR Part 172, which is the administration of engineering and design-related services as promulgated by Federal Highway Administration. Now, 23 CFR 172 mandates that engineering and design-related services are procured in accordance with the Brooks Act, which was instituted officially in 1973 and mandates qualification-based selection, or selection of the most qualified without the influence or consideration of price. That may come as a surprise to a lot of folks. We also follow, as mentioned earlier, OCJ 50-22-1 through 9, which is essentially the state of Georgia's mini Brooks Act, as many other states have, and that also mandates QBS selection, although it does allow for some additional evaluation criteria not allowed in the FHWA rules. So just to give you an idea of the magnitude of the work awarded through this process, in fiscal year 16, which just concluded on June 30, there were a total of 561 consultant contracts awarded, totaling just over $286 million. Those were both new records for Georgia DOT. So there are a lot of opportunities, and we need a lot of help in accomplishing the work that we need to get done. TSP, as I mentioned, many of the areas procured by GDOT, not just TSP but in the others as well, require some form of pre-qualification. The purpose of this essentially is to establish a qualified bidders pool, essentially to get some of the administrative requirements out of the way up front to make the bidding process more streamlined and quicker. So for engineering and design-related services, TSP has assigned what are known as area classes, and each engineering and design-related service has an associated area class. The link provided on this page will direct interested firms to the web page where you can go and review that and see what are the requirements for pre-qualification for all of those services. So you're encouraged, you'll see the screenshot at the bottom, that link there to the consultant pre-qualification manual. You're encouraged to go to that page, click on that manual, and review that manual so you can be familiar with the process and requirements for each area class. But typically, every area class is going to consider available equipment, if necessary, any kind of staff registration, staff certification, staff education, and or their qualifications, as well as any specific training that staff may have to have. When you consider the geotechnical services, they also require pre-qualification, but geotechnical services include lab services, vibration and blast monitoring, foundation drilling, pile drive studies, building inspections, enviro drilling, lake siltation studies, geophysical services, pipe camera, pavement quarry, and there's some others as well. I never cease to be amazed at all the things that GDOT gets involved in. I had no idea before I came to work here, but you'll note that the link on this page has been provided so that you may go back and refer to the geotechnical, the specialty services later, and that's the screenshot down there is what that page will look like. So in addition to geotechnical services, the other specialty, before I get too far ahead, when you're considering geotechnical services, evaluators are, again, looking at previous experience, just like in engineering. But they're also looking at, is your lab accredited, and does your personnel have experience and additionally any registration certifications which may be required. So that screenshot you see in the lower right-hand corner is kind of what that application looks like. So we have provided an application where you go on there and identify the types of things you're interested in doing, as well as the other information that's required. So typically that application is then emailed to a mailbox, and then the evaluation process starts. Right-of-way services is the other specialty area. You can see that there's a laundry list of things that you have to be pre-qualified in, from property acquisition, negotiation, condemnation, removal of underground storage tanks or USTs, demolition, asbestos inspection, abatement, appraisals review, all the way down to timber specialists. So that's just gives you an idea for the kinds of things they actually pre-qualify folks in. And again, that's the same page that you saw previously for geotechnical services. You just go to the area for the specific to right-of-way. Some of the things that the right-of-way services consider, they look at obviously previous experience, any necessary licensing and accreditations that are required, especially for appraisers. Some of those areas might require a follow-up interview for any new individuals who are applying, and the main purpose of that is to allow an opportunity for those individuals to demonstrate their knowledge rather than just saying on a piece of paper that they have it. So again, that's what the lower right-hand corner shows you kind of what that application looks like. I realize it's small there, but that's why you got the link to the web page that you can go to. So TSP typically uses two main procurement processes: the RF qual, or the request for qualification, and the RFQ, or the request for quote. The RF qual consists of a technical evaluation of firms' qualifications, only qualifications. By Georgia law, we are required to do a two-step process where all submittals are reviewed, and then 3 to 5 firms who are identified as the most qualified are shortlisted. GDOT has elected to evaluate qualifications, experience, and availability in step 1. In step 2, the shortlisted, the 3 to 5 shortlisted, submit their technical approach, which is then evaluated along with the past performance of the firms. So all ratings from both phases are then combined to determine who the most qualified is, and that's who the selection is made on. Now, the RFQ is used for the geotechnical and the right-of-way services. So bidders are usually first required to be pre-qualified. We've already discussed that. And once it is verified that they are pre-qualified, the award decision is then made based on the lowest price from every bidder. So two approaches: request for qualifications for engineering and design related, request for quote for geotechnical and right-of-way. So that wraps up kind of TSP and what they do. On to construction bidding. Many of you are familiar with this because you ride up and down the road and you see the work that construction bidding does, including but not limited to resurfacing, striping, bridge replacements, new construction of bridges, roadways, interchanges, signal upgrades, turn lanes. If you can imagine it happening out there on the roadway, construction bidding probably has a hand in it. It's important to know that construction bidding procures for our traditional design, bid, build program. This is where somebody designs the project, either GDOT forces internal or a consultant, and we provide the plans to all the bidders, who then bid according to those plans, with the award going to the lowest bidder. And then when awarded, the contractor goes and builds the project as it was bid. Hence the phrase design, bid, build. So CBA, or construction bidding, gets their authority to procure construction from Title 32 of the Official Code of Georgia. And in fiscal year 16, again just concluded, June 30 of this year, they had awarded a total of 346 construction contracts totaling a little over $1.4 billion. So a lot of opportunity, a lot of work needs to be done. We need a lot of firms to be engaged with us. Now, just like with TSP, they do require contractors and subcontractors to go through some type of a pre-qualification process. It's important to note that CBA requires pre-qualification of prime contractors and registration of those firms not desiring to bid as a prime, but who desire to work on construction projects as a sub. So the information that is submitted and is evaluated includes, for primes, the work type, location, their qualifications, stability of the company, capacity and equipment necessary to perform the work, and for primes, that company's financial ability, stability, and resources. Now you'll notice when you look at the subcontractors who only have to be registered, everything is the same except for that financial ability, stability, and resources. So what that looks like, they too have provided information on how to become pre-qualified or registered as a prime or as a sub. So again, the purpose of this is to establish a qualified bidders pool, essentially to get some of the administrative requirements out of the way up front to make the bidding process more streamlined and quicker. So CBA has provided 2 forms which must be completed for firms desiring to become pre-qualified as prime, the Form 478 and the Form 477, which you see outlined in the red square there. Again, the difference is primes and subs have to fill out the Form 478. Only primes have to fill out the Form 477, which is information about their financial stability and other data. So again, the link is provided on this page so that interested firms can go directly to the web page for construction services. It's important to note, construction bidding is essentially an RFQ. Remember we talked about that just previous, where bidders are first required to be pre-qualified. Once that's been verified, then the award decision is made based on the lowest price from every bidder that meets those pre-qualification requirements. So that's processed through the Bid Express system. I am not the expert on that system. Rich Williams with Construction Bidding is. I'll have his contact information at the end of this presentation for anybody that needs assistance getting there. But all construction bids are awarded on a low bid basis. So now kind of the oddball group, our innovative delivery group. They handle what we call both design build as well as public-private partnerships. So the advantage to these is they combine both the pre-construction services that Transportation Services Procurement does, as well as the construction services that CBA or Construction Bidding bids. They combine all that into one contract. And this allows the contractor to participate in the design of the project. Typically what happens is we will design it up to a certain point, and then we'll throw those plans out along with the rest of the requirements, and proposals will come in whereby it considers qualifications and price in a lot of cases. I don't want to get too deep into that. I'll have another slide for that in a moment. But basically the goal is to allow the contractor to participate in the final design and look for ways to reduce cost, improve communication, and get things done faster, expedite delivery. So a little different codes govern this. Of course, still 23 CFR, but a different portion, Part 636. Georgia Code 32281, which was enacted in 2004. We've got some board rules, and then Georgia Code 32280, which is specific to the P3 program. So innovative delivery, if you think about it, it allows us to save time and money as compared to the design bid build program because we're kind of lumping all of it into one. It allows for a lot more discussion, a lot more innovative techniques and strategies, and it encourages innovation by allowing the design build contractors to come up with some new ideas and to get new performance specifications. So a really neat slide where you see kind of the overall of what are the main opportunities with design build and P3 or public-private partnerships. So the biggest one, the one most of us are concerned about, is accelerating delivery, accelerating project delivery. That also, however, allows us to shift some risk away from the state. It does that by putting some more responsibility on the contractor who must work with his designer to come up with the final design. The award, however, for these is not based only on the cost, unlike in construction bidding. Cost can be a factor. We'll get into that a little more in just a moment. And believe it or not, competition drives value, right? So competitive tension drives value. We get better pricing. One of our largest projects that we've ever procured, the Northwest Corridor project, I-75 and 575, the managed lanes up there, the final price came in for that a lot lower than we were expecting. That was due to this competition. During that process, what's also allowed is for those bidders to come in and give us what are called alternative technical concepts, or ATCs. It allows them to come in and say, hey, you have thought about doing it this way, but what if we did something a little different over here to drive some more value and to get things done a little bit faster. So those are some of the biggest benefits to design build and P3 alternate opportunities. But the biggest thing is getting things done faster and getting out of the way. Just to give you an idea for the magnitude for innovative delivery, as of the close of FY15, we've got an update for FY16. The final numbers are coming in. They had awarded 30 contracts totaling a little over $946 million. That number is going to be going up significantly in the very near future with the financial close on the 285 and 400, which is not yet reflected in here. So still, a lot of opportunities, a lot of needs going forward for doing business with Georgia DOT. Innovative delivery typically uses 3 selection methods. in the design, build, and P3 program. So they do have one where it's a single phase low bid. So that's equivalent to the RFQ or request for quote that we've talked about previously, where all responsive and responsible bidders, essentially those that are identified as having been pre-qualified, are allowed to go forward, and then the price is looked at and the award is made based on who gave us the lowest cost. That's typically reserved for the most simple of projects. I don't know if that's been the most voluminous we've had to date, but it certainly is not. Those are not the biggest dollar amount ones that we've had to date. The second option they have is what we call a two-phase low bid, essentially where we combine the elements of a request for qualifications, or an RFQ, and the elements of an RFQ. In this one, all bidders are reviewed, and then their qualifications are reviewed, their team members are reviewed, and then 3 to 5 of the most qualified are shortlisted. And then those 3 to 5 are allowed to bid a price, and then the award is made based on the lowest cost of those 3 to 5. If we go this route, that's typically getting into some services that are a little more difficult and a little more technical than the single phase low bid would require. Last but not least, the request for proposal, or RFP, which is awarded based on a best value model. So the award there is based on the highest combined total for the technical portion and the cost evaluation. And P3 procurements typically use this method because they are the most complex. Ideally, what you'll have is you'll have some split between the technical and the cost. I think the last one we did, the technical portion counted for 30% of the overall score, where we looked at qualifications, availability, technical approach, and then the cost was 70% of that final score. So that all gets wrapped up in some grand formula, and then it spits out a number at the end, and whoever has the highest number when you consider the technical approach and the cost is identified as the winner. So those are the methods that Innovative Delivery uses. Again, I encourage you, here's the link to their webpage. There's a lot of information out there on their webpage about upcoming projects. The design build manual is out there, as well as previously executed contracts for design build. So I'll provide that link there so anybody interested can go and check it out, and you'll find a lot more information. If you haven't heard anything about the major mobility investment program that's coming forward, essentially sometimes I get these confused, but I believe it's a 14-year program that's going to total around $13 billion that's going to be built. Most of them are managed lanes within the Metro Atlanta region, although there is some activity down around the coast in the Savannah area. But talk $14 billion over the course of the next 10 to 15 years is what we're talking about. There's a lot of information out there, and you really need to go and check that out and be familiar with it. So that's 3 groups so far. The last of the groups that I'm going to talk about is the operational purchasing group. And remember, this is the group that gets the roadway to maintain after everything else is done. Operational purchasing kind of has 2 worlds that they live in. One's governed by Official Code of Georgia, Title 50, the other by Title 32. Under Title 50, that's the area that they have to follow the rules promulgated by the Department of Administrative Services State Purchasing Division. This includes commodities and goods, any kind of administrative service, and software and hardware. Office supplies, we used to have planes. It included maintenance and purchase of planes. OCJ Title 32, however, is where, while it doesn't dictate the type of procurement that we use, that's where we get our authority to procure routine maintenance services, as well as any other service done to the roadway or anything defined as part of a public road. So operational purchasing kind of lives within 2 worlds. To give you an idea for the magnitude of their work, in FY16 they procured a total of $316.4 million, 352 service contracts, and awarded 153 routine maintenance ITBs, or invitations to bid. We'll get into that a little bit later. For those 153, basically in 11 weeks, we awarded $166.4 million through those 153 routine maintenance ITBs. Again, I'll get into that in just a little bit. But first I want to talk about kind of the rules that operational purchasing has to follow under Title 50. So DOAS, or Department of Administrative Services State Purchasing Division, kind of established this order of precedence. And I'll run through this quick, but I think it's important so all listeners understand there are clear rules as to how things have to be purchased. DOAS, state purchasing, I'll refer to them state purchasing from here on, they establish statewide contracts that not just GDOT uses, but every agency and university within the state of Georgia has to use as mandatory statewide contracts. So the first thing that any buyer with GDOT has to look at is the product or service available on one of these mandatory contracts? If not, they go to Tier 2, which is an existing state entity or agency contract. This would be any contract that GDOT has procured specific for its services to utilize. So if it's not a mandatory statewide, do we have it as an agency contract? If we don't have it as an agency contract, then it falls into Tier 3, which is really a pretty specific area. There are two entities. Georgia Enterprise for Products and Services used to be Georgia Industries for the Blind, or we refer to them as JEPs, as well as Georgia Correctional Industries. Essentially, there's what we call the State User Council, and they mandate some items that are purchased, that must be purchased through JEPs, or Enterprise for Products and Services, as well as Georgia Correctional Industries. Now, the interesting thing about that is the commissioner for Georgia Correctional Industries, so the commissioner for Georgia Department of Corrections, where this falls under, has said, we're not going to mandate anything. We want people to choose our products because it's what they would choose otherwise. But he does have the ability to certify some products as mandatory. So if none of the items exist under those first three tiers, then it falls down into Tier 4. There are convenient statewide contracts, again, procured by DOS state purchasing, but not necessarily a mandated source. Any JEPs preferred products, which would be any of those that are not certified as mandatory. Next would be any state purchasing division pre-approved piggyback purchases, where one agency may have an existing state entity contract up in Tier 2, and we decide that we don't want to go and procure it on our own, but we want to piggyback or buy off of their contract. Then next, there are some pre-approved consortia and cooperative purchasing opportunities where some states have banded together and tried to get some economies of scale and get some better pricing for some things. We have very few of those. Last but not least, any open market purchases. That's the last alternative, where we actually go out with an RFQ or an RFP to buy whatever goods or services are required. So that gives you that's kind of our decision tree, that in operational purchasing, what they follow to decide what products or services they're buying. So how do they get the job done? Again, you've seen parts of this slide before. Operational purchasing has the most available to them. Again, the request for quote, the RFQ, which you're familiar with already, that is where we put out our requirements, specifications, scope, whatever. The award's made based specifically on who gives us the best price. Another item we hadn't talked about before is a request for information. This doesn't actually result in an award, but usually could lead up to another solicitation. It usually allows us to ask questions of suppliers to get information that we may use in a future solicitation, or maybe just to figure out what's available out in the marketplace. They also use the RFP. We've talked about that previously, where the award's made based on the highest combined total for the technical and the cost evaluation. Last but not least, the tool they have available, which is pretty new for our utilization, is a request for qualified contractors. This typically results in a technical evaluation of suppliers, and then kind of a two-step process follows after that. Qualified suppliers or contractors are identified, and then once that pool is established, an individual invitation to bid would be solicited, where all those qualified have the option to respond and can bid, and then the award's made based on the lowest price. So I point out that last one because the next area that we're going to talk about is something that's really new. With the passage of HB 170 last year, we've got a lot more money available to us to both build, but more importantly, to maintain the infrastructure that we have, which brings us to the routine maintenance. Sorry about that, went back one slide too far. Routine maintenance work. That's been the big focus that we've been on. Remember those ITBs I mentioned earlier? 153 totaling $166 million in 11 weeks towards the end of the past fiscal year. Well, see, historically, GDOT has performed most routine maintenance activities with internal crews. That's for a variety of reasons, but in a lot of cases, some of those jobs are typically not very profitable for contractors to be able to do. But that's changing. The mindset is changing, and the routine maintenance work going forward, we're going to be contracting a lot more of that out. So we're going to be doing that essentially in two categories. There will be contracts that will be procured by our state maintenance office. It's the statewide category. And then there will be contracts that will be procured by our individual districts. You'll see on the right-hand side, GDOT is divided up into 7 distinct districts. And the procurement offices who fall under us within those districts would run those procurements. Anything from the statewide, my office would run. So to give you an idea of what are the kind of services, the work categories that we're talking about: pavement preservation, right-of-way reclamation, herbicide application, guardrail repair. You can see the list. I'm going to show you, I'm going to go through a series of slides which is going to show you some pictures just to give you an idea. So there's mowing. You know, for the first time ever, GDOT does not have any mowers on the road mowing grass. We contracted out interstates 10 years ago or more. Then we graduated to interstates and divided state routes, and this year for the first time we've also added undivided state routes. So for the very first time we have contracted out all mowing to external contractors. We're also going to be doing pavement preservation. There's a number of things wrong with this picture. The one that's most obvious to me is what's on the next slide. It's crack sealing, where we contract out for somebody to go and just fill the cracks so we hopefully keep the moisture out and preserve the roadway a little bit longer. If we didn't do that, you get to this next scenario where we're having to do chip seal. Basically, we're overlaying so we can hopefully extend the life of the asphalt just a little bit longer. Another alternative, if there's rutting in the roadway, is we can go and do strip sealing, where we're just doing, I don't know if you've ever driven on a roadway where you've seen where heavy trucks have gone and just the track where the tires are going have started to sink in and settle. This would be how you would fix that. Everybody's familiar with potholes. We may contract out for somebody to go out and just do miles of down a certain state route and fill in all the potholes. In addition to that, you can see edge rut repair. I'm sure most everybody has seen this for folks in certain areas where people run off the road. We may contract out for somebody to go in and repair the edge and build the shoulder back up. A big one here in Metro Atlanta is concrete slab repair. Any of you have driven around 285 have probably seen some of this happening. But we've contracted out a lot for concrete slab repair, where they'll go in, they will chip out the broken slab, replace the new one. The biggest drawback to doing this is the traffic control, which means we're having to close lanes while that work is done and the concrete is set. That's probably one of the most invasive things that are done under the routine maintenance services. But in addition to that, it's more simple things like vegetation removal. You see here where those trees are all growing towards the road. That's a problem if there's storms and it falls on the road. It's also a problem when it snows and it's dripping water down that then freezes and makes a big mess. Everybody has seen cable barriers that have been run into, as well as guardrails that need to be replaced. So we're contracting out those services as well. In addition to that, we're contracting out striping and raised pavement markers, or RPMs. That'll be going forward. A lot of the smaller short line jobs, you're going to be seeing a lot more of that stuff going on, as well as, last but not least, joint repair sealing. There was a lot of that going on last summer, where we're essentially repairing the joints on a lot of the bridges. So again, big thing, traffic control there. But that just gives you a flavor of the kinds of things that we're going to be contracting out with these routine maintenance services. Now, to do that, GDOT, again, has opted to qualify contractors utilizing that request for qualified contractors, that last thing that I mentioned that operational purchasing has at their disposal. So this is just the front page of our request for qualified contractors for routine maintenance services. That has along with it an application, which you see on the right-hand side of the screen. But to give you an idea, the RFQC allows us to outline specific standards or requirements that prospective contractors need to meet or exceed. And only those that meet or exceed those standards are allowed to participate in the second step, which we call an invitation to bid. It's essentially the same thing as the request for quote, or the RFQ. We just are calling it an invitation to bid, kind of to set it apart as a maintenance project. Now, it's important to note that at the RFQC stage, that does not require contractors to provide pricing. But once those contractors are identified, then the second step is where they can choose whether they want to bid or not, and then the award is made based on the lowest bid. The beauty of this, it allows us to have what we refer to as a continuous and open procurement. There's a deadline every month for anybody that wants to get in on any of those service categories can. They submit their application by that deadline each month. They're identified as qualified or not, and then we execute what are referred to as Maintenance Master Service Agreements, or MMSAs. We execute those to kind of get some of that administrative requirements and technical terms and conditions out of the way up front. Then the invitations to bid are released, and anybody that is qualified in that category is eligible to bid on it. The beauty of that is the RFQ remains open, and that process begins again the next year. So we feel more competition benefits everyone, and GDOT has really been focused on trying to get more firms engaged in this process. Now, our Office of Communications has done a beautiful job in helping us to outline this process on our web page. You'll see the link there provided at the top of the page, but that's a screenshot of what it looks like when you go to that page. You'll see there that it has the application, the manual for this, which I encourage you to go look at, the qualified contractors list, what are required in each one of those service categories in order for you to be identified as qualified. And then it's kind of broken up into two steps. Number one, how to get qualified for routine maintenance services. I'm going to talk briefly about how to register as a sourcing bidder and the importance of selecting NIGP codes. That's why they're circled in red. But then the second step is, okay, now you're qualified. Well, how do you submit on those future opportunities? I encourage you, go to this web page, click on those. You'll see on the next page is kind of what you'll see when you click on it, but very detailed information on how to do that, as well as some screenshots on what it looks like. So when you get to this routine, this is that step one, how to register as a sourcing bidder. The important thing to remember is we are utilizing the backbone that state purchasing has provided, which is referred to as Team Georgia Marketplace. It's the application that all state agencies, not just GDOT, utilize. But in order to get bid notices, you need to go in here and register as a sourcing bidder. There's all kinds of webinars, trainings, as well as the orientation that you can register for that's available to find out how to do that. But that information is there when you go to that page. The biggest thing, as I mentioned, is selecting NIGP codes. That stands for National Institute of Governmental Purchasing. So everything we buy has an NIGP code associated with it. You'll see the three on that page that you really need to focus on. 91327 for construction of highways and roads, 91313 construction of bridges and drawbridges, and 98836 for grounds maintenance, mowing, edging, plant trimming. You really need to focus on making sure that when you're registering, you select those NIGP codes, because what's going to happen is anytime a bid opportunity is posted, whoever posts it has to select the appropriate NIGP codes for that bid. And by you registering, it doesn't require anybody overlooking. It's just you saying, I want to get notices about this, anything that hits this NIGP code. Those buyers select those NIGP codes, and this system automatically sends you a notification for every bid that's posted that hits that NIGP code. So I've heard some firms have, they pay for subscriptions to organizations that tell them about bid opportunities. This is available to you free of charge. All you have to do is go out and register yourself with Team Georgia Marketplace to start receiving notices, both for GDOT and for any other state agency within the state of Georgia, and even some local governments use it as well. So again, another thing about registration and NIGP codes, DOASs, or state purchasing tools, they have a supplier orientation presentation. You can click on that link, and that will take, or type it in, and that will take you to that. You can also get there by going to their homepage, doas.ga.gov. I encourage you to go and view that webinar. It's available online at no charge to you, and provides a lot of good information. So again, just one more plug on NIGP codes. Pay special attention so that you make sure you receive notices from all the agencies who need the services you are interested in providing. Not just, other agencies have roads as well, corrections, DNR, university systems. They all have roadways that they're responsible for maintaining. which would be great opportunities for smaller companies to maybe get engaged in. So last but not least, here's an example of the kinds of things that are available out on the DOS or state purchasing webpage. You can go to that link, and there's all kinds of pre-recorded training webinars, specifically how to register as a supplier and how to respond to events and eventually place bids in Team Georgia Marketplace. So that's a lot of information, talked about 4 different areas, but I want to give you one slide that kind of summarizes what are the steps to doing business with GDOT. The first thing is for you to identify the type of service or good that you provide. Once you know what type of service or good you provide, you probably know that better than anybody, determine which 4 of these groups and which appropriate office and process you're required to follow. Once you know that, if pre-qualification or qualification is required, submit that application. I've given you the web pages where you can go and see that information. Once you're qualified, and you could do actually step 4 at the beginning if you so desire, you can go and get registered with Team Georgia Marketplace and select your NIGP codes so you start getting notifications. It'll give you an idea of what all is available out there, how quickly are things coming. But once you are pre-qualified or qualified, if required, execute any necessary documents. Then you start receiving bid notices from Team Georgia Marketplace or Bid Express if it's construction bidding, and you have to follow the instructions to bid. I cannot stress that item enough, that routinely firms that want to get engaged do not read the bid requirements. It is critical that you read the bid requirements and know what is required of you in order to bid. It seems so elementary, but yet firms get disqualified for not following that more often than you would believe. And then if you're identified as the winner, you simply begin doing the work and finish the job at the best value or best price for the taxpayers of the state of Georgia. So that slide right there sums up everything I was just saying and really are the steps for how to do business with GDOT. Next slide here gives you contact information. There's mine at the top, as well as the 2 folks that fall under me, Curtis Scott, who runs the Transportation Services Procurement, and then Mary Zyrock down at the bottom in Operational Purchasing. You can contact any of the 3 of us for the areas that we oversee. Mr. Darrell Van Meter oversees Innovative Delivery, and Mr. Rich Williams oversees Construction Bidding Administration. So there's all their contact information as well as their email addresses, and any of us will be more than happy to assist with any questions that you may have. So I was surprised I got all this in, but that in a nutshell is how to do business with Georgia DOT. And if we got time, I believe next thing is for any questions that we might have.
Treasury, thanks so much for your time. That is obviously a very thorough presentation. We actually had several questions float in as we went through the process, but you managed to answer, it looks like answer all of them with this information. So with that, just thank you very much for your time and for going to the effort of putting all this together. Just reminding all of our attendees, this will be archived on our website. So you'll have the ability to go back and watch the presentation again. Feel free to share it with your colleagues or members to give them the opportunity to see this information as well. You can also find previous webinars that we've done on gatransportation.org. So again, thank you very much for your time today. My name is Seth Milliken. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Transportation Alliance. Thank you so much to our presenter, Treasurer Young, from the Georgia Department of Transportation. We'll look forward to getting back with you soon with more great content about Georgia transportation. Thank you so much.